You need to.
Are these low calorie? These are low calorie, right?
Low calories. Yeah, low calories, no sugar, no carbs. Yeah, these cakes are just for you. Are we on? Yes, we are. Okay. Now, where did I put? You think there's a calorie there? Just one? You say a calorie?
Yeah, I have a calorie.
Yeah.
Let's see who you emailed to. Go back.
You want to see who emailed me today?
Yeah.
Sputman emailing me. Okay, there we go. Off we go. I'm scared.
I am too.
Okay. What's this?
Is this a psychology get together or is this a physical study?
Where's the oh there it
This
is.
is about phobia. This
I
is
lost my paper.
phobias.
No, we're not going to talk about phobias. I think. These are talking about the realistic figures.
Yeah.
Realistic here?
Very realistic. Trying to.
Right or wrong, but realistic. Phobias are, by definition, sometimes mostly young people.
Right. We'll try to. What Richard was telling me today. Utilize the fears. Try
yeah,
to.
What you do is, let's say a lion was chasing after you. Okay, so you jump into a car and you close the window. You're scared, but you're safe. You're not scared anymore.
Yeah.
Okay? Now you're outside the car, you're very scared. You're inside the car, you're okay. You're kind of scared, but not as scared as you were outside.
You're saying there's levels of fear.
That's it.
I agree. So this rabbi was sitting with his.
This is the meeting between Esau and Yaakov.
Correct. And
We
Yaakov.
read about Mincha.
And Yaakov is quite scared and he's not embarrassed to say that. And today.
How many were the men coming with Esau?
400? Was it 400? Yeah. They were all equipped with the top, cutting edge technology of weaponry in those days. They were equipped with stones, with, arch. What did they have? I don't know, sticks, stones. Yeah, they were all over the place.
Yeah, you should cut too.
Yeah.
Brown swords.
So this rabbi was sitting with his students. They were having a class outside. They were talking about trust in God, about fear. And the rabbi says to them, to have true trust in God, to have real bitachon, it's called bitachon, is to trust God, is that even if there's a dangerous situation, you are not to be afraid because you know God will protect you. So while the rabbi was talking to them, all of a sudden this great bear appears from the woods. And the rabbi, of course, was the first one to run away to try and get, climbing on a tree. And they said, what did you say about the trust? He said, yeah, I'm not scared. I just want to play it safe. You're saying in the car, if you're in the car in the line, he's not scared. You're just playing it safe. In Hebrew, we say, yesh bitachon veyesh le'eter bitachon. So we can, le'eter bitachon.
You released that bear? Is this your true story?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
I mean, rabbis don't go camping.
Well, some of them do.
Yeah, right.
Rabbi Marty does.
We have, we got a Donald alarm right now? This is a Donald alarm. We're going to finish that Donald alarm.
Okay. Do you want some other dangers? They want the danger easy to say and there is no political complications.
Now, I was very upset. You know, in Chicago, where I lived for 25 years, this hospital I know very well, some crazy guy walks in, kills a cop, kills an emergency room doctor. You know, it takes the emergency room doctor and a nurse who's 25 years old. Doctor's 35, the nurse is 25. He killed a cop, kills himself. I mean, now we're going crazy, I'm going to say. Even there's no place. Even hospitals,
about one a day now, multiple shootings.
But I mean, a doctor and a nurse, we're not safe anymore.
What part of Chicago?
This downtown, southern part of Chicago, south part of Chicago.
South part of Chicago or downtown? Downtown is north part of Chicago. Or center.
It's not a grid. You're a mathematician, so luckily Chicago's a grid. So maybe, and Madison is 0, okay? So maybe the 1800 block south. So, it's a little bit scary down there, but I mean, not that scary. Mercy Hospital. Think of it, Mercy. Get it? Mercy Hospital.
Where is this?
Chicago, this crazy guy who goes into a hospital, kills an emergency room doctor.
When?
12 hours ago.
Really?
And a nurse, 25 years old. They're both very young people.
Why?
Kills a cop, killed himself. Why hospital? That's like supposed to be a place you don't go and hurt people. Rabbi, can you just say something? Say something?
I mean, what could I say? I mean,
Say little
it's
my opinion, I will have to know more about this. The fact that a guy killed himself eliminates some other cases I could have had
He should
otherwise.
kill himself first.
yeah, that's a good idea. All these guys, first kill yourself, then kill everyone else.
Yes.
You're start. This is a startup. You know,
I think commercial.
we'll make it as a bumper sticker. You know, you want to go on a mass murder? First kill yourself, then kill everyone else. I like the way you think. This is how innovation works, Richard.
I find it neat to fill.
Okay, so we live in a very weird era. You just reported another. Sometimes it feels like the future is not secure. There's crazy things happening. Many people are walking around with a constant notion of fear. You call someone, one of your family members, they don't answer. You know, within 2 rings, and you start having imaginations of what's going on in the other side of the world. You know, somebody speaks about rearranging in your workplace, and you immediately think you're going to get fired, and they're going to kick you out, and they won't pay you compensation. Someone goes to the hospital because they're not feeling well, and everybody else thinks the worst they could think of. So really, it's not a healthy environment that we live in. Our mind brings those fears upwards and then enhances them. And the question is, why do we do that? And how could we refrain from doing that? Fear is an emotion that captures you completely. Fear basically makes you completely idle. You're not able to work when you are completely afraid, when you are scared. You're not able to improvise when you are afraid. You don't know what's it going to be and how things will unfold when you are within this fear. You know, in the army, when I wasn't a combat soldier, I was in the army a bit, but I was far from that. But one of the probably done was no, it wasn't. Anyway, one of the things that they work on the most, we can find it also in the book of Deuteronomy when the people are going to wage war, and Moses is saying, if someone is afraid, now it's time to head back home. You are not going to help the military. You're not going to help anyone if you are scared, if you are afraid. This is not going to work. So one of the key elements for a fighter, for a person who is about to go into a combat, is to take away the fear, which obviously is easier said than done. But you know, we have numerous cases of people who had functioned. Not only did they function, but they functioned beautifully within this stress and within this fear of a real battle. The problem is that fear is supposed to make us alert, right? Being afraid is trying to think a few steps in advance. But instead of doing that, when someone is really petrified, they just can't, they're completely idle. They just can't do anything. They just feel like it's taking them over. It's taking over. The fear is that of such a thing that makes you as if you don't know how to do, what to do, and how exactly to respond. So being worried about something in advance is try to make plan A, plan B, right? We're going to see soon in our weekly portion what Jacob is about to do when he is about to encounter his brother who swear to kill him. And what is really the Jewish technique? We'll try to get what did he do? And we'll also see there's some critic over Jacob. There's also some criticism that our sages don't spare and say about Jacob and also about Moses. So in many cases, the fear is more severe than the event itself. As we said earlier, something happens and then people go into this, imagination mode, and they always try to think. And of course, the doctors in most normal countries, they want to be covered against lawsuits, so they always give you the worst scenario, right? The doctors don't want to be very optimistic, because if something goes wrong, then someone will go back and sue the doctor. You promised me that my father will be okay, and now look what happens, right? So the doctors would always by default choose the worst case scenario which they would report, right? They just want to keep themselves covered. It's quite of a sad situation, but it's our brothers and sisters, Jewish lawyers in the United States that are to do with that after winning all these court cases against Goyim, of course. Yeah. How else do we make money? So, yeah. So, really, psychology has a lot to do with fear. One of the most common therapy is to expose the person to the source of their fear, to try and work around it mentally and intellectually. If we're talking about someone who's afraid of a certain scenario, bringing them different scenarios, showing them that not necessarily it would end as bad as that person believes it would, right? And psychology has a lot to say. You could probably testify psychology has a lot to say over fears, but really we want to look a little bit about Judaism and our story in this weekly portion, which focuses basically on the fears of Jacob, is a good way to try and perceive what the Torah wants from us and how we should behave when we are in a situation when we are worried and afraid. So worries and fears are basically all over the place. And here is what we have with the meaning of Jacob and Esau. So just as a briefing, I know you probably came back from your travels. I don't know if you had a time to prepare a cheat sheet. You did! Oh, look at that. I'm sorry, I belittled you. Okay, so Marty's got his cheat sheet. He knows exactly what the weekly portion says in a nutshell. So Jacob is getting ready to meet his brother, who swore to kill him after taking the blessings. This had been 22 years that Jacob and Esau were apart. You would think 22 years, he was living in a different country, he was, getting married, having 4 wives, 12 kids, he's got his hands full. Probably his brother went on in life, continued on, and this is the time he goes back to his father's place, and he knows that he's going to encounter his older brother Esau, which is no longer the firstborn, because Jacob bought his birthright.
Like 2 minutes older.
What? Yeah. Yeah.
Older brother, like 2 minutes difference.
Yeah, or maybe 1 minute even. And he knows that he's going to meet Esau, so he sends messengers, he sends emissaries. There's an opinion in our sages that he sent angels, not only messengers. And he says, go sniff around, tell me what's going on. I'm going to meet Esau. And they come back with bad news. They say, we saw Esau, and he is sharpening his swords, and he is equipped with 400 people that are all warriors and fighters, and he's looking forward to meeting with you. So Jacob, hearing this report, gets very anxious and very afraid, and he starts with his master plan of what to do. So first he says, I'm going to send him a gift. Then he says, I'm going to make a prayer for God. Then he says, I have to prepare myself also to war, because, if I'm going to have to wage war, if, it's either him or me. Jacob was not happy with either of the options. Killing him or being killed was not something that he wanted to pursue, of course. And Jacob was thinking, we'll open a new page. It's been 22 years. I know I took the blessings, but let's move on. Let's get over it. But Esau was far from that. So Jacob is very afraid. And here's what the scripture tells us. The angels returned to Jacob. This is according to the interpretation that were angels, saying, we came to your brother to Esau, and he's also coming towards you, and 400 men with him. Jacob became very frightened and was distressed. So he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and the cattle and the camels, into 2 camps. His idea was that we'll split, and then they won't be able to attack 2 fields at the same time. So at least half of my family and half of my property will be spared if the other half would encounter the battle. Interesting, strategically.
How do you sell that?
Who's on what half? Yeah. What? Okay. Where are you? Yeah. Okay, you go there. Oh no, you can. Oh, exactly. Anyway, so he was afraid, and the Torah does not hide it from us. The Torah stresses it, that he was frightened, he was distressed, and soon we're going to see what is there to say about it. Here's another example of someone who was afraid. We haven't learned about him yet. We're going to get there in a few more weeks when we start the book of Exodus. We'll study about Moses. Moses went out on the first day, and he saw two Israelites fighting with each other. And he saw on the first day, he saw an Egyptian hitting a Jewish person. You remember, Richard, that Rabbi Jacobson was giving that over? He went out and he saw the first anti-Semitism that's recorded in the Torah is that he went out and he saw this Egyptian guy hitting a Jewish fellow.
Yeah.
He wants to get his wife. His wife apparently was beautiful, the Jewish fellow's wife, and this Egyptian wanted to spend the night with her. And of course, her husband was nothing but a problem. So he decided to solve the problem in a very original way, which is killing the husband in order to get the wife. And Moses comes out and he sees what happened. He immediately understands what goes on, and then he hits the Egyptian, he kills him, and he buries him in the sand. Right? And we have three ways of how he killed him, right? Either with a fist, with a shovel, or with uttering God's name, right? You remember that?
He spent a long time on this.
Yeah, he was going through the examples.
Scenarios,
Yeah, right. So that was the first day. Second day he comes out and he sees two Jews fighting with each other. And look what happens. He went out on the second day, and behold, two Hebrew men were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, "Why are you going to strike your friend?" And he retorted, "Who made you a man, a prince, and a judge over us? Do you plan to slay me as you have slain the Egyptian?" Look at that. Moses was afraid there was no one there. Moses was thinking there was no one there. He killed the Egyptian. It says, "Vayifen kol v'chol," he looked to all ways. There was no one there. He killed the Egyptians. Look, guess what? Everybody's speaking about it. All the Jews know that Moses killed the Egyptian. So he says, "Do you plan to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Moses became frightened and said, "Indeed, the matter has become known." And the next thing you know, Moses runs away. And after Moses runs away, Pharaoh wants to kill him. And then he goes on, he meets Tzipporah and gets married. And he only returns to Egypt
So
when God
someone
sent him.
saw it, someone told, or is that he's dealing with the Vayishlach prophets?
So it doesn't seem like it was prophecy. These two Hebrew men were not prophets. I don't know exactly how it was known. The scripture says explicitly that he looked everywhere and he saw there was no one there. But I guess it's, when you do something out in the open, even if you don't think there's no one there, somebody could be watching from a window or behind a wall. They had DNA tests. So Moses gets very scared. Everybody knows what's going on.
Can you give me a time frame? Because some of us, the secular Jews, there's a movie called The Ten Commandments.
Oh, look at that. 5 minutes ago you were a semi-rabbi and now you're a secular Jew.
I'm going back to our roots, okay? So what happened was, when did Moses was not to see Hashem, did he? Did
No.
he actually go see him?
No, that was
Before?
that was way before. That was growing up in Pharaoh's house as Pharaoh's grandson.
Right. So when he killed it, it's by him killing.
He knew. I guess either his mother told him, or he realized that he wasn't a part of the family, even as a baby.
Yeah.
Most probably Pharaoh's daughter told.
Yeah, probably she didn't deny his
She has
true
no
origin.
reason.
Well, there was a reason to deny that, because her father was the one saying to kill the Jewish babies, so she wasn't really going to tell him that, look what I got, a Jewish baby, right? Because her father was getting this whole decree around to kill all the Jewish babies, and she comes back home with a Jewish baby. So I don't know exactly what the nature of the relationship was and whether or not Pharaoh knew that Moses was Jewish, but Moses didn't know that he wasn't.
Didn't know,
But Moses-
it's clear.
Moses-
But she knew.
She knew, of course, but I'm saying whether she told it to her father,
No,
it was a matter of
she not.
disrespect.
But she would have told Moses.
She would have told him,
He
probably.
was a prince, though. He killed the Egyptian person. He was a prince. So.
Right.
Okay, so.
So he was entitled to kill. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're part of the royal family, right?
And also, the husband survived, right? He survived. Didn't he?
Yeah, he survived. He
So
did.
he got a phone call. How do you know what's going on? He just happened to be walking by.
I don't know exactly how it transpired.
You're a rabbi. You should know
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there. I promise
Where's
you.
the Torah? Bring it out. Let's read the Torah.
Okay, let's read the Torah. We'll do it on Shabbat. So Moses was also scared. Another example. This is all the way in Numbers in Bamidbar. Then they turned and headed north towards Bashan. Og, the king of Bashan, came out towards them with all his people to wage war at Edrei. The Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have delivered him, his people, and his land into your hands. You shall do to him as you did to Sichon, the king of Amorites, who dwells in Heshbon." So Moses was afraid. Torah is telling it to us very clearly. He was worried, he was concerned. God has to go down and tell him, do not fear, don't be afraid. You will do to him exactly what you did to Sichon, which of course was killed by the Jews for opposing the Jews, not letting them go through his country.
So
they didn't even want it. They didn't even want to wage war with him.
Criticize the translation, who dwelt in Heshbon.
Right. Yeah, dwells. Kind of. Yeah. Right, dwell. So look at what Midrash has to say. Midrash Rabbah, there were two individuals who were promised by God and were afraid. The most chosen of the patriarchs and the most chosen of the prophets. God said to Jacob, here I am with you, yet he was still, and Jacob feared. God said to Moses, I will be with you, but still had to reassure him, do not fear him. So the Midrash criticizes both Moses and Jacob. They were promised by God. They received orders and they received promises. Don't worry, everything will be okay. And yet we still find that they were worried, that they were concerned. And the Midrash actually uses a different terminology to define it. It says, B'shnei b'nei Adam, two people. He doesn't give him a title of dignity because they were just like regular people when it came to that. Although they were promised by God, they still managed to fear. So from here we learn that of course they got a promise from God. And of course if you were promised by God, you would think, I would just erase the fear from my head completely. But apparently it doesn't work like that. Even after being promised by God, they still had fear, and therefore they're criticized over it. So we also know what Rabbi Nachman Vayishlach says, right? The whole world, Vayishlach Dan, Kol ha'olam kulo, Gesher tzar meod. The whole world is a narrow bridge, but the essence or the crux of the matter is not to be afraid. Rabbi Nachman Vayishlach, his famous analogy of the world is a famous Hebrew song, you know it, right? Kol ha'olam kulo, Gesher tzar meod. You know?
That's beautiful.
You know it?
Wait, is he from, is Breslov in Russia?
Breslov is in Ukraine somewhere. In Ukraine, Breslov. Yeah.
So wait, who was he now, Rabbi Nachman?
He was a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. Yeah. And that is a Breslov Chassid.
Zagri says he's the 10th generation of the Baal Shem Tov.
Okay.
He's on his mother's side.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He said you give him $4 and that, you buy him a coffee at Starbucks.
Being 10th generation and a $4.
Yeah, so I mean, that guy in Breslov says his relative. I'm telling him that.
Uh-huh.
Relative.
So that's Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. So the world is a narrow bridge. You know this analogy, Marty? You heard that? The world is a narrow bridge. So the world, you've been to too many narrow bridges by now. I think you could identify. So the whole world is like a narrow bridge. You don't see the end of it. It's quite narrow. And the main thing is not to be afraid. That's how Rabbi Nachman says. And here comes the biggest question. Why not to be afraid? Or how could Jacob not be worried? We're talking about a murderer, a rapist, a criminal, someone who would be put in, what is that island that is, there's a prison in the island that you can't, someone who would definitely make it to Alcatraz without any way back. Esav was a murderer, a convicted murderer, or he was doing that for fun as a profession, just like hunting animals. He was hunting people. So Jacob is going to meet him, plus this individual promised that he's going to kill him. So why would he not be afraid? He had all reasons to be scared. That's his brother, right?
It's called fratricide.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a spoiler. Eventually he didn't kill him, right? He hugged him. He hugged him, and on the word Vayishlach, that he kissed him and he hugged him, on these words in the Torah, remind me, I'll show you on Shabbat, there's very few words in the Torah that has, like, you don't have bold font, but they have dots, little dots on the word. And there's a few little dots on these words that he kissed him and hugged him. And the reason for that is, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says that in fact Esav hated Jacob and wanted to kill him. It was only at those very few moments that Jacob was able to soften his heart, and he truly gave him a hug. Because according to a few interpretations, he was trying to kill him while giving him a hug. While giving him a hug, he was trying to stab him or do anything to him, something else. But according to what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai explains, he actually did give him a hug and did kiss him with all his heart, although he hates him.
So the reader doesn't get what's wrong with this text.
Wait, and after that though, they parted ways.
Of course, Jacob said, I was lucky for a few seconds.
He walked back.
Yeah, he said, why don't we walk together? He said, you go. Yeah, I'll meet you there. Yeah. Don't call us. We'll call you if we're interested.
That's the last time they met.
Huh?
That's the last time they met.
Never again. Yeah. He said a few seconds of grace is all what it takes. We came to terms with it. I don't want him to. He knows Esav from the inside out. He knows Esav is not able to forgive or forget or forsake this avenging mode he had. So it was just a few seconds that he actually embraced him. But then that's it. He's out of luck. If he stays around him too long, he'll get back what Esau promised to give him. So
Esau died before Jacob, didn't he?
Esau died on the same day of Jacob. Jacob died, and Esau not on the same day he died, on the same day he was buried. You know the story? Jacob died, and he died in Egypt, of course. Right? He died in Egypt. Before he died, he asked his son Joseph, which was the king of Egypt, I don't want to be buried here. I want to be buried in Israel, in Hebron, in the cave of patriarchs. Right? That's what I want to be, with Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob, right? So he says, so Joseph promised him he will do so, and being the king of Egypt also wasn't so easy. He had to persuade Pharaoh to let him go. They made a big funeral going from Egypt to Israel, and they buried him in Israel. They're about to bury him, and all of a sudden Esau shows up, and he says, you can't bury him here. And they said, why? And they said, right, Chushim. And then he said, well, there are two places of burial. We're twins. Esau and Jacob are twins. He said Jacob buried his wife, Leah. Leah is buried in the cave of patriarchs. He said he buried his wife in his lot. The other one is mine. We're twins, right? They're the two sons of Isaac and Rebekah. One is mine, one is his. He used his to bury Leah, and the other one is mine. But they said, no, he bought from you the birthright. He bought from you. It was a package deal, right? You throw in a few, like you buy stuff in America. They throw in, you said, you throw in your burial, but you care about the burial place, so give me a break, And he said, no, I sold him my birthright, but I didn't sell him my lot, my, what's it called, my graveyard, right? And they said, no, you did sell him. How did
P-L-O-T, plot.
Plot.
Yeah, P-L-O-T.
P-L-O-T, plot. So they said, no, you did. No, I didn't. How do you know? We have a contract. Where's the contract? It's in Egypt, right? Jacob lived in Egypt. The last 17 years he lived in Egypt. He had all his household there. So they said, Esau said, I want to see the contract. Otherwise, no deal. I claim, no, you say you have a contract, go get it. So they wanted to say Naphtali. Naphtali was someone who would run very fast. Said, okay, go to Egypt and get the contract. Okay, you can't FedEx in it. Well, that was the FedEx in those days.
Far away.
That was, yeah. And then, like Dan was saying, Hushim, the son of Dan. Dan was one of the tribes, one of the sons of Jacob. Hushim, he was deaf. And he said, what's going on? With this, I don't know how exactly they communicate. He said, what's going on? And they tried to explain to him, there's a contract, and Esau, you see this guy, Esau, and the plot. And he says, you think that we're going to wait till he comes back from Egypt, and my grandfather is here lying on the sand, and his body, his corpse is... He said, it's not going to happen. He took a sword, and he cut Esau's head. That's right. And then the head rolled onto Jacob. And then Jacob, while being dead, opened his eyes, looked at Esau's head, and smiled. And that's what Rebekah said, why would I lose you both on the very same day? It was actually her prophecy that they would die on the very same day. That was a story that we deviated. Just for you, we deviated. Anyway, that was when Esau died, when Jacob was...
That's called murder, by the way.
I know. I haven't endorsed it. I was just saying what happened. Plus, he was deaf, he was confused, he was distressed. That's what they say about these guys with a gun. He was emotionally distressed, and he was this, right?
I'm going to start over there. Okay, Isaac and Rebekah are already there.
Yeah, they were married.
Okay, so now it's time. So the plot, it's actually a family plot.
It is.
It's a cave.
It is.
Okay, so after...
Adam and Eve also was the before Abraham.
Adam and Eve, yeah.
And also Rabbi Kilminster, but we'll get to that later, okay?
Yeah.
But the thing is after that's it. After Jacob and
Leah.
Leah, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, Rachel was married in Beit
By
Lechem.
the wall.
Yeah, in Beit Lechem, right.
To get there is very difficult.
Yeah. Well, no, it's better. Okay, so here's how Jacob. Why was he scared of Esau? What's to be scared? Well, there's a lot to be scared of. Genesis 25. Now Jacob cooked the pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. He was tired. And Esau said to Jacob, "Pour into me some of this red pottage, for I am faint." He was therefore named Edom. Edom is red, or Edom. And Jacob said, "Sell me as of this day your birthright." Esau replied, "Behold, I am going to die, so why do I need this birthright?" Rashi says, why was he so tired? He was faint, ayef in Hebrew, from committing murder. As it said, "For my soul is faint before the murderers." Our sages say, who did he kill that day? In fact, he killed a lot of people, but on that day he killed Nimrod. Nimrod was the one, you remember, sending Abraham into the fire. Nimrod had those special garments that were inherited from Adam. And these garments were very special. They had virtues. And Esau wanted his garments. So Esau found a very creative way to get the garments. He killed him, and he took his garments. He took his clothing. But Esau felt like the garments, the clothing, were too special, so he never used them. You know when he used them? He used them when he served his father Isaac. We're going to see soon that Esau, despite of his character as a murderer, there was one thing that he was excelling at. It was the honoring of his parents. Kibud Orim. He was beyond anything you could imagine with regards to honoring and respecting his parents. Either way, Jacob had all reasons to be scared. We're talking about a vicious murderer, a true villain, and he's coming towards him. So of course he was to be afraid. But in fact, here's what the Talmud says. Here's another quote from Talmud. In Tractate Sanhedrin, Rabbi said to him, "I'm concerned lest sin cause me to suffer the pain despite the Torah study and the good deeds in which I engage." In accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi raises a contradiction. It is written that God said to Jacob, "And I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go." And is it written, "And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed." So God says, "I'll keep you." He says, "I was worried." If God assured Jacob that he would keep him, why was he concerned? Yaakov Bar Idi said he was afraid lest sin on his part caused the assurance to be abrogated. Yes, God promised me that everything will be okay, but maybe in the meantime, I am not the same person that I was before. Maybe I've done some sins, maybe I did something wrong, and I don't deserve that protection that God had promised me. So maybe, of course, what God told me was valid in those times, but now it's been so long, maybe, Jacob said to himself, maybe I had some sins, and those sins took away my protection, the special protection that was promised to me. So of course he was afraid of Esau being Esau, and he was also afraid maybe he did not have enough merits, enough rights to withstand Esau. So that's a true concern already. Do you imagine? Would you imagine?
What rights you said? Rights?
Yeah, rights like merits, like right, like mitzvahs, right? And what merits? What sins was he worried about? So look, there were two things that Jacob had that Esau did not have, which marrying two sisters. Esau, although doing all those horrible things, he never married two sisters, and the lack of honoring parents. Jacob was not home for 22 years. He did not speak to his parents. He didn't send them a postcard. Nothing. They didn't even know what goes on with him. He was busy there with Laban and his daughters and the wife and the children and many children, right? 12 kids. It's quite of being busy, right? And he was working. We studied last week. He was working for 20 years, non-stop, day and night. He was working. He was serving. He was doing all over everything that was required and more than that.
He's
So,
very good with his father-in-law, wasn't he?
oh, his father-in-law deceived him, but Jacob was always,
He was very good to him, wasn't
yeah,
he?
yeah,
He won his money.
right.
Okay.
But then again, his parents, he only has one father and one mother, and he wasn't there for them. When they became old, when they needed some help, when they needed support, even if they did not need him, just being there for them is a big thing. He wasn't there. Mind you, what happened to him? 22 years. He hasn't seen his son, Joseph, right? They said this was the outcome. 22 years he didn't serve his father. 22 years his son was gone missing. thinking that he died
But
when he was in
his
Egypt.
sons kidnapped him and sold him off to the Egyptians.
Right.
He was punished enough, wasn't he?
Well, he was punished later on. This was the punishment of not being there for his parents, that his son is not there for him.
That's it.
Right. But again, coming Jacob looking at Esau, he has all reasons to be scared. First, Esau was a murderer. Second, Jacob had a promise from God, but maybe he had sins. And third, Esau had things that Jacob did not have. Jacob looking at himself, of course he was righteous and everything, but he said, something is missing. My brother, despite of all the bad things, all the negative things that he hasn't married two sisters, which was not yet prohibited, but for Jacob, fulfilling the whole Torah was an issue. Right? According to Ramban, says Nachmanides was that he couldn't live in Israel with two sisters. Israel would not, the country of Israel would not, because of its holiness, will not take someone married to two sisters. And of course, the second thing, the lack of honoring parents, he just wasn't there for them. Well, Esau was there for them. Not only was he there for them, he actually did everything in his might, and more than that, to respect and to honor his parents.
Why does he say, I think, to Esther, Garti,
Im Lavan Garti,
Shamati,
mitzvot Shamati. Right.
he did keep his parents.
Right.
From his brother, probably, from Esther.
Yeah, but he wasn't there for them. Even if he tried, he wasn't. It's not like I like my parents, but I put them in an institution. That's yeah, I love them. I call them sometimes.
How does he say he keep it?
You're right. What is the Tanakh mitzvot
When's
Shamati?
the last time you called your mother?
What?
When did you call your mother last time?
On Thursday?
Okay, good. You're a good young man.
Thank you. Okay.
Thursday? Does she have WhatsApp?
She does, actually, recently. She
Yes,
does.
internet, sure.
She doesn't know how to use it though. Yeah.
Hello? Who's this?
Yeah. The story with Rabbi Buni Vayishlach. He was a Talmid of a disciple of Jose Milublin and the Rebbe of the Kotzker Rebbe, and he was once studying with his students a piece of the Talmud of the Gemara, and he was trying to understand it very deeply, and he couldn't. He wasn't getting it. One of the students that was there was an orphan. And then while the rabbi was trying to focus on understanding, he felt like there was a little bit of a break, and he recollected that his mother asked him to do something for her, to bring a box from somewhere or anyways. So he went quickly back, he quietly went out of class, and he went quickly back home, and he helped his mother. He remembered that his mother asked him to do something, and he didn't do it. So he came back and he said, what do you need? And he helped her. He went up to the ladder, he got something on the roof, he got it down for her. And then after he finished his assignment, he went back to class. And when he went back to class, so the rabbi of Buni Vayishlach picked up his head and gave a big smile and said, "Where did you go?" So the guy was a little embarrassed, he had to run away. And, he didn't want to, he said, "What did you do? What did you do just now? Tell me, what did you do?" So he was honest. He said, my mother is all alone and I went to help her. So he said, "I want you to know when you enter the room, Abaye entered with you." Abaye was one of the Tanaim, one of the rabbis of the Talmud. He walked with you here, and he actually resolved my question that I couldn't understand in the Talmud that Abaye was saying. Apparently Abaye was an orphan. Abaye is, the acronym was Asher B'chai Rucham Yatom. Abaye was a very famous Amoah. He was an orphan. And because of this boy trying to go and help his mother, so he actually merited that Abaye would accompany him back to class. And Abaye coming to class, that resolved the doubts of the rabbi. The rabbi could understand the Talmud. So we see that honoring parents is no joke. Honoring parents is a big deal. So, of course, Jacob thinking, I don't have this. Esau does have that. Here's something he has over me. Of course, I should be afraid. Of course, I should be scared. So, we can find another sample. We'll tell, the question is, what we're trying to understand is whether or not it's good to be afraid, what happens when fear comes, and how do we know what we need to do if we're trying to look at Jacob. So we read about Jacob. First, there's criticism over him that he was afraid, and second, we see why was he afraid. Now, there's, if Jacob, like Reuben was saying, if Jacob was scared over his sins, and of course Jacob did not have sins or did not have any of the sins that we possess, so what could we say? If Jacob was afraid after being promised by God, I will be with you, I'll guard you, I'll keep you, I'll make sure you're okay, but he was still worried because of his sins, so to speak, so what could we say? That we never received such a promise from God initially. Plus, we also have a lot, not you, but me, a lot of sins that would render everything that's, not so good. There's two explanations. The first explanation is called belief, believing in God. And the second explanation is called bitachon. Bitachon is trust in God. And we'll soon see the differences between the two. Belief is something we possess. As Jewish people, we all have belief. We're believers. Believers, children of believers. That's how the Gemara calls us. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. We are believers and our parents are believers. It doesn't help anyone if they say whatever they say. I don't know. I never learned it. I don't know about it. I never studied it. It doesn't matter what they say. So we have belief. We possess it. Bitachon, trust in God, is not something we possess automatically. It's something we have to work hard in order to develop. Let's go a little bit in our history. We were Jacob, we're Abraham, Moses. Let's move fast forward. So we get to King David. King David was having a hard time. I was reading last night, by the way, before I went to sleep, I was reading a little bit about King David. I found this website and an article somebody wrote. It's probably the longest article I ever see. It's like probably 150 folios, like one article. It's like, it could be a book. Life of King David. That's what it's in Hebrew, the title. And it's all embedded with verses, so it's not too many theories. It's all it's backed with sources and with verses. Anyway, King David had a very harsh life from the very beginning of his life. But we're talking about a stage in his life where he was old already. And, he waged war against everyone. He finally got to a place where he is safe and tranquil. He built Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and Israel was safe, and everyone, all the enemies were scared of David. He was a mighty warrior. And now what happens? His own son, rebels. His own son, Avshalom, wants to take the kingship, wants to be the king after David, and he gets advice from Achitophel. Achitophel was the advisor of King David, and he started working behind his back with the son who rebels him. And King David does something exceptional. Instead of fighting his son, King David evacuates his palace and he moves away. He's becoming an exile. He's leaving Jerusalem. He's leaving everything behind. He takes with him the group of people that was always with him, his minister of army, right, Yoav, and they go with him and they basically run away from Jerusalem. And Avshalom, coming to Jerusalem, wanting to wage war with the king in order to get the kingdom, there's nobody to fight with. King David is no longer there.
Where's his son? Out in the wilderness? Where's
He
his son?
came.
He
He was first the son. Avshalom killed his brother.
Really?
Yeah, he killed Amnon. King David had several wives, and he had children from each one of the wives. So he killed his brother Amnon. Amnon wanted to rape Tamar, who was a sister but not a real sister. Anyway, he raped her. He did something. Anyway, the brother Avshalom killed. And King David spared him, although he killed his brother and a murderer should die, but he spared him, and I think he was sent out of the palace for a few years. Anyway, he went back to the palace, and King David told him, he said, I don't want anything, I just want two people to be with me. I'm the son of the king. Of course I was expelled, of course I'm not really worthy for anything, but I just need two people to be with me. So the king gave him a royal order that he could have two people. Guess what? He went to two people and he showed it to them, and then he went to two other people and he showed it to them, and then he went to two other people. All I need is two people, and eventually he built his own camp, and of course they loved him. He was also a mighty warrior. And after King David reigning for 37 years, mind you, 37 years as a monarch, you always have people that are not happy with you. Okay? It doesn't matter, you're president for 2 months, you can have people not happy with you. If you're 37, of course, he was a good person, and everyone, a lot of people liked him, and he protected Israel. He was a warrior, and he cared about the people, and he gave everything. But, for 37 years, you're a king. You always have this baggage of people that are not happy. And Avshalom targeted those people and he said, you're not happy with the king. Guess what? We're going to change the rule. We're going to change everything. I'll be the new king, and I'll do everything right. You know, like a new guy in fresh blood, they say, right? New blood. I'll make everything work. We'll build this place. We'll make it work. Anyway, King David understands. He knows his son well, and he understands what happens, what's about to happen. So he evacuates. He runs away from Jerusalem. He doesn't want to fight. Avshalom, unfortunately, doesn't settle with that. He wants to defeat his own father because his kingship is not complete until the old king, who so happens to be his father, is not dead. So he goes out and he makes a dreadful mistake fighting with David. He didn't have a clear advantage. He had an advantage if he would come to Jerusalem, because King David would have held Jerusalem, and all the people who are not happy with King David would have helped his son. So he would have lost the fight somewhat, or there would be a disaster. Anyway, Avshalom chases King David, and he wants to kill him. His own father, mind you. And King David takes the battle to someplace else. He doesn't want it to be in Jerusalem. And because it was in the forest, in the woods, Avshalom's advantage was no longer sensed. And King David had his best people, the best warriors. So what happens is they win the war. King David warns them, do not touch my son, do not kill my son, do not do anything to my son. But his army minister, Yoav, does not adhere that. And as soon as Avshalom goes with the horse, you remember the story, he goes with the horse, and he had long hair, and his hair got caught up in those branches, and the horse continued. So Avshalom was suspended between, he was up in the air, and that's when Yoav came and killed him. And when Yoav came back to the king, to David, and said, look, I killed your son. So of course the king was not thrilled, to say the least. His kingship was saved and the rebellion had stopped, but he wasn't happy that his son was killed. Anyway, this was just the introduction, because I find the stories very interesting. So I decided to share with you. What I want to focus today, probably this will take 3 hours today, the class. What I want to focus today, when King David evacuated Jerusalem, when he left Jerusalem, who was embarrassed? He was ashamed. He was, it wasn't really at the peak of his power. His own son is going to fight against him. His own son took over the palace. And one of the advice of Achitophel was that the son would go and sleep with the wives of David. Right? So that would symbolize as if he truly regains the power. He truly holds the power, because he even gets to get the king's wives, the king's women, or whatever it is. Or one of the advice he did adhere to. Anyway, King David is all humiliated. He's just by himself. There's just a group of people with him. And look what happens. A guy comes out of nowhere and starts cursing and swearing at David and saying, look at you, you're a nobody, you're useless, you're nothing. Now, normally, someone who curses at the king, it doesn't get to finish their sentence, right? It's either the king or the aides or the people that are with him that are pretty much making them into chopped liver. But this time, yeah, chopped liver. What am I, chopped liver? No, you came on time. It's our fault. We started early. It's our fault. So Shimei ben Gera comes out as King David runs away from Jerusalem. Again, he's all ashamed. He's all embarrassed. He's not in his peak. His son took over everything. And Shimei comes out, and as if it's not enough, you got a cookie? Look at you.
I always thought it's not by chance that this happened in the lands and by person of the tribe of Benjamin.
Exactly. He was also going for Shaul, of course. Anyway, so look what happens. And Abishai, the son of Tsuya, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I beg you, and remove his head. And the king said, what is between me and you, sons of Tsuya? So let him curse, because the Lord had surely said to him, curse David. Who then shall have the right to say, why have you done so? King David takes a whole different perspective. This guy with his sword says, look at this, you're the king, and this idiot comes and swears. He was throwing stones at him, right? He was swearing and throwing, look at this, let me go. And no, don't go anywhere. He's cursing me. Why is he cursing me? Because I deserve it. God told him to curse me. It is God that gives him vitality, that gives him power, and he's cursing me. And let's look just a second before you want to say your quote. Okay, I'm getting to that. So yeah, what did you want to say? You wanted to add something? Reuben.
No.
Oh, okay.
At this moment.
Wait a second. So basically, the way it goes is, if I curse you, is it because God told me to do it?
Apparently so, yeah. Well, we have to distinct, there's one thing, when something bad happens to me, that's because I deserve it. The person who does the negative thing to me could have choose between doing it or not doing it. In other words, if you wouldn't do it, somebody else would do it. The fact that you chose to do it, that you deserve some retribution over that. Not by me, no, I won't do anything. But if somebody likes to be, just like Pharaoh, we're going to read about Pharaoh, that God hardened his heart, doesn't let him send the Jews. He says, let's send the Jews. He said, okay, then his heart hardened. What do you want from him? Well, you know what? Pharaoh enjoyed to be the one that's spanking the Jews. He liked it. So God said, well, you like it so much, guess what? You can't get rid of it. And then God, of course, punished him over all that he'd done. Another story I brought about Rabbi Akiva. Oh, soon we'll get back to David because there's more today to do about David. Oh, you know what? We'll skip the Rabbi Akiva. We'll get it later. I'll get to that. Where's that thing of King David?
Rabbi Akiva is buried by the.
Okay, now I can say what I was thinking about saying.
Yes.
There is a very strange follow-up.
Here. Oh,
The
sorry.
last words of the King David to Solomon, when he remembers this,
Right.
and gives a very strange instruction to his son.
He said, "Va'asita kechuchmatecha," you should do as your wisdom. And the reason for that is, when King David had we're going to read it now. King David was all focused about trying to find the guilt within himself of what had happened. This was a disgrace to the king. This was something that was not supposed to happen. King David had his own account, and that's why he said, don't do anything to him. King Solomon, on the other hand, was not present at that event. And he wasn't there to make that math of saying, why do I deserve? He only saw a disgrace to the king, something that could not happen. And therefore, King David says, you should do as you understand. And King Solomon understand that he has to bring respect back to the house of David and get rid of this, like it's called, the dead dog. Look at what Sefer HaChinuch says. For some reason, this slide went all the way there because you confused me, Richard. If you wouldn't come, oh yes! Look at that. Sefer HaChinuch. A person should know and put it in his heart that everything that happens to him, good and bad, the cause of it coming to him is from God. Blessed be He. And from the hand of man, from the hand of a man to his brother, there would not be anything without the will of God. Blessed be He. Hence, when a person caused him pain or hurt him, he should know for himself that his own sins caused it, and that God may be blessed, ordained this for him, and he should not place his thoughts to taking vengeance from the one who pained him, since he is not the cause of his evil, but rather the sin is the cause. Like David, peace upon him, stated, leave him to curse, since the Lord told him so. He made the matter depend upon his own sin and not upon Shimi ben Gera. So what King David did is revolutionary. He looked at the negative thing and he says, you know why things happen? There's something wrong with me. I have to correct my ways. I have to be better. And when I'll be better, everything will be okay. In other words, instead of trying to blame everyone else but yourself, like your dear president, for instance, yes. Right? Yes. So I just remembered that's. So try to think maybe there's something wrong with me. Now, of course, King David was a righteous person, but he still found flaws within himself in order to justify what had happened. And that's why he said, don't do anything to him. This is not him. He is not the issue here. I am the issue here. What goes on around here is a message from God. God is trying to tell me something, and He has His messengers to tell me. So this guy who's cursing me is basically a messenger of God. That changes the whole outlook. You know, somebody hits your car, scratches your car. You think, you idiot, you can't drive. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? I'll sue you, or my insurance, my lawyer. Hey. You know, this guy, it could have been a Google automatic vehicle that would scratch your car. What then would you say, right? They started in California. They drive already. Yeah, they're driving already. Oh, really? I thought California already has cars by Google. No?
They
No?
do have,
Yeah, they have in
San
California.
Francisco.
Oh, in San Francisco. Maybe.
Rabbi, didn't they have prophets in those days that like could see things?
Yeah, Nathan was the prophet. Nathan was the Navi. Yeah, Nathan was the prophet in the time of King
Do we
David.
have prophets now?
Do we have prophets now?
Yeah. I think we're looking for prophets now.
Yeah, we're looking for one. Just put
Rabbi, tell me what's going to happen.
post the ad in the newspaper looking for prophets. You know, let's see what you.
Not money prophets. But
Yeah.
prophets.
I know. I don't know of any prophet in our
But nowadays,
generation
they're just
other
saying
than.
a lot of people interpret things. This happened because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it to happen. You should know that.
Right. Now let's look at what I skipped. Where's the thing that I skipped? Oh my goodness, so many things. Listen, we haven't covered even half of it, and it's already 8:10. Yeah, maybe we'll continue because I haven't got. I'm on page 2, and I got till page 5. I kid you not.
Can we get some more cake?
Yes. Would that leave you here longer?
We gotta stay here long. We get the mats out and start to get ready for camp out.
Do you bring your pajamas?
We have pajamas.
You bring a pajamas party. Anyway, okay, I'll tell you the story of Akiva. It's a famous story. Ido probably knows it from childhood. Famous story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva used to say everything is for the good. So one time he was traveling along the way. You know, when people travel, usually they take, what do you take when you travel? You take your checkbook,
Pajamas.
right? You take some food, right? You take your alarm clock, right?
I have a question, a real question. Is this before, is this the beginning of 24 years or after 24 years? Or is this
Probably
like-
after the 24.
So he's like 64 years old now.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, he took with him on his journey a donkey so he could ride, and a chicken so we could wake him up in the morning, and a candle so he could read, right? You could take a phone. Your phone could wake you up in the morning. Could be a light. You can't ride it yet, but you never know. Maybe one day you could ride your phone. Anyway, that's what he took with him, and he was traveling, and he went to some place, and he got to the city, and he knocked at the door, and he said, "Could I stay overnight?" They said, "No." And he walked to another house, and he says, "Could I stay over in the night?" "No." And he says, "You know what's wrong?" And, "No, we don't like guests here. We don't know who you are. Get away. Get out of here." He goes to another house. He realizes he's out of luck. He says, everything is for the good. Mind you, he came, he thought, Rabbi Akiva, he came his business card. Look at me, Rabbi Akiva. I'm a big sage. I have 24,000 students. Out the door. I don't know who you are. Don't tell me any stories. Everyone can print business cards nowadays. Right? He thought, so he says, all for the good. You try to print business card, Rabbi Akiva. All for the good. That's what he says, all for the good. Could you, Dana, go to the So he goes out to there's nothing, he goes out to the woods. And he goes out to the woods and he says, okay, I'll study something. He had a candle. I don't know exactly what type of matches he had, but he managed to produce fire, which was very difficult. And he started learning, right? And then what happens? The wind blows, no candle. Okay, what does he say? It's all for the good. And then, the lion came, and his donkey was like parked somewhere with a thing. It's in the woods, it's in the forest, in the wilderness. A lion comes, 1, 2, 3, no donkey. He says, okay, no donkey, it's all for the good. And guess what? While he was trying to make some arrangements to sleep, setting up his alarm clock, which is his chicken, and then what? A cat comes, or a fox, or whatever, no chicken. That's what he say, all for the good. That's what he says, it's all for the good. So no place to stay, no candle, no chicken, no donkey. What is it? All for the good. In the middle of the night, he wakes up, he hears screams, crazy screams. What's going on? He tries to look. He sees a group of robbers go into the city, and they move from house to house. They rob everything, and they kill people. And he thinks, oh my goodness, isn't it nice and safe here in the woods, right? And then he realizes, they come close to the woods, they want to see what's going on. And he said, if I had my candle, they would have spotted me. If I had my donkey, he would probably make noise, and my chicken making noise, being afraid, hearing all this tumult, all this noise, they would have responded somehow, they would have found me and killed me too. So he says, you see, it's all for the good, right? That's the story of Rabbi Akiva. You've probably heard it before.
Wait a second now. Who ate the donkey? The tiger?
lion, tiger, I don't know.
How come the lion didn't eat him?
I guess he had his donkey. That
He
was
had to climb the tree to get away from
no, he had his donkey. I guess that was enough of a dinner. It was enough of a dinner for that lion. So it's all another. Anyway, so Rabbi Akiva used to say it's all for the good. So this is an interesting approach where nothing can hit you. Why can nothing hit you? Because it's all for the good. It's all for the good. Now, don't get me wrong. You don't have to be Rabbi Akiva for this. Many times in life, you have things that are considered as a miss, but then you realize it's all for the good. You missed the bus, but then you meet someone that you haven't seen in years, and you have a good chat with them, and you get home 10 minutes later. Sometimes you miss the bus, you go crazy, right? Your flight cancels, but then somebody sits next to you in the next flight, and you have this great time. You speak to them, they're Jewish, you lay tefillin with them, you don't know what. All these things that look as if they're bad, but eventually turns out to the good. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that look bad and they stay bad. Right? Not always everything turns to the good in our eyes. It is actually all for the good, but sometimes we're not there to see it. Sometimes the outcome would only come many years to follow. Sometimes it's not in my lifetime, in my grandchildren's lifetime. Like the story we said about the person who gave him kosher food every week. You remember he was traveling and gave him, and then his grandson eventually became religious just because his grandfather was wasting the kosher. You remember that story? Anyway, sometimes you're there to see it, sometimes you're not, but you have to believe that everything is for the good. So this is all about belief. Belief takes away the fear. Belief clears one's head and makes you pray, and belief calls for a change. You believe in God, so you say, okay, first of all, I believe. There's one thing I think, I believe everything is someone up there. There's someone that's looking at me. There's someone that has a plan, and that plan is going to be executed whether I like it or not. And I want to believe that everything will be okay. It clears my head. Instead of having all these worries and all these fears in my head, it gives me room to pray, and it actually calls for a change. Maybe things are wrong. Like King David said, maybe something is wrong with me. I should better my ways, and then things would evolve to the best. So that's about belief. This is what the Alter Rebbe said when he was captured in prison, and he said, this is we're going to celebrate it next week. I'll give you a spoiler. Next week on next.
like a hotel.
Yeah, that's the K hotel right here. Yeah. Next week, you don't want to be in that cell. Probably they put a bed there just for the. It's a miniature, I think, baby. I don't know where they get this picture from. Anyway.
It's actually have cells of all kinds.
Yeah. So next week is the Alter Rebbe's celebration. It's also my birthday. Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
35.
Really?
Yeah. That's old, isn't
I was
it?
35 a long time ago.
Really?
Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah. Marty, you were 35, or you just skipped to 36 or 34? I'm thinking of skipping.
Is that really what it looked like?
I don't know. It's some word of recreation. I don't know. Anyway, somebody sent me this photo. I don't know if it's. Yeah.
Is the real cell?
I think that somebody did a recreation. I'm not sure whether or not. Yeah, Richard is right. It's too nice to be a cell in the Russian prison. In the Russian prison, yeah. Yeah, Russian hotels would look less than that. So Russian prison, probably. Anyways, so he said, he brought a verse from Tehillim, Sarim redafuni chinam, u'idvachav k'chad libi. Princes pursued me for nothing, but my heart feared your word. The Alter Rebbe said, I wasn't afraid of what happened around me. All I was afraid, so to speak, fear, awe, not fear as in awe. I was afraid of God. All I cared about was God. All this thing that is happening around me, of course he was a righteous person, was a pious person, was a Rebbe. Everything that happens around me, I pay no attention to it. All I have, when I have fear, it's not fear from the outcoming, what's going on here, it's fear of God. It's awe. It's the inspiration that I have. So here's what Chovat HaLevavot said, duties of the heart. Trust is peace of mind of the one who trusts. That one relies in his heart, realizes in his heart that the one he trusts in will do what is good and proper for him on the matter he has trusted him with, according to his ability and his understanding of what will further his good. The person he trusts is absolutely generous and kind. It is the most possible extreme of generosity and kindness to those deserving and to those who are not deserving. And that is generosity and kindness is continuous, never ending, and without interruption. Of course, this of course refers to God. When somebody trusts God, he has the mode. We said there's belief and there's trust. Trust is much stronger than belief on one hand. On the other hand, it doesn't come automatically. It's something you have to cultivate within yourself. Trusting God is the sense, the notion that there's someone above you that knows exactly what goes on. Not only does he know, he's the one who initiates everything. And you say like this, your math, so to speak, is as follows. If I'm good, then I shouldn't be worried. Nothing bad will happen to me. If I'm not good, then I shouldn't be worried. Because whatever happens to me is what needs to happen to me. So then there's no reason to worry. Now soon we'll see a little change on this theory. And we'll see that even if I'm not good, there's still a reason to hope that everything will be okay. And this is that's when we bring King David. What was that? Yeah. So Joseph being sold, also we haven't got to that yet. We'll get to it in a few weeks.
How many sisters did Joseph have?
How many sisters?
Yeah. You said that Jacob was busy with daughters too.
No, just one daughter.
One daughter, the rest were brothers, right?
Everyone else were brothers, yeah. As far as we know, right? Everyone else were brothers. So Joseph was a person who had trust in God. Everything that happened, he always had trust. He always says everything is for the good. And he also behaved in a certain way. So look at what happens. You know, what happens, they put him in the pit, and then a caravan of Ishmaelites passes, and they say, come on, what are we going to gain if he's in the pit? Let's make some money, right? Let's sell him. They sell him as a slave. What are they selling him? They're selling him as a slave, to this Ishmaelites caravan. Ochat Ishmaelim. And then what happens? The caravan is coming from Gilad, and the camels were carrying spices, palm and lotus, going to take it down to Egypt. Usually, the caravan of Ishmaelites would carry merchandise and other stuff that were not so pleasant, that were not so good. But in honor of Joseph, so to speak, and that very day, when that specific caravan passed by, the ride Joseph got to Egypt, he wasn't going on a Toyota, he was going on a Benz, he was going on a Rolls Royce to Egypt, right? He was going with perfumes. They were selling other stuff, right? Usually they would bring neft, right, oil and other stuff that were bad smell.
Frankincense and myrrh.
What?
Frankincense and myrrh.
What's that?
Don't worry about it. It's not about it. It smells good. It's like perfume.
Okay, that's what they were bringing. So Rashi says it was a miracle. Hashem made Joseph's journey to Egypt easier.
So they were trading in oil, a neft.
All right.
So actually, the pit was hell, but he got to go on actually in a Rolls Royce.
On a Rolls Royce. And the question is, why does God perform this miracle to him? For goodness sake, he's going to Egypt to be sold as a slave, right? He was sold by his own brothers. Would you imagine what kind of a depression that brings about? But God, guess what? You're going with a perfume caravan. So what? Who needs this miracle? Joseph would think, well, what are you sending him on a Rolls Royce where? To Egypt? What is it for? So Chaim Shmulevich used to bring, he says like this, you think Joseph would have smelled something by the perfumes? He was all tied up. He was put in the car on whatever they had, a trolley, whatever they had. He was all tied like a slave. Obviously, they didn't let him any other perfume. He was on the floor thinking, what are they going to do to me? And this whole perfume part. So in fact, this was a hint from God saying, don't worry, everything is under control. I don't want you to be dead. I don't want you to be killed by your brothers. I don't want you to rot in a pit. There's a mission for you that's waiting in Egypt. You have to get to Egypt and go through this whole course until he becomes the king of Egypt. So God says, the Ishmaelites are looking at you like a piece of merchandise, like a nothing, a pair of shoes. That's what they look at you. But it's not them. I'm the one running the show, God says to him. I make everything match according to the master plan. So you have to go to Egypt. Guess what? You're going on a Rolls Royce to Egypt. You're going to Egypt. You don't want to go there. You're being sold as a slave by your own brothers, but you're going on a Rolls Royce. You're going to go with, that's the miracle that had happened, which apparently was insignificant, but it was very significant to Joseph. A hint from above. God says, I'm over this. I'm on top of it. Don't worry. This is something that needs to be done. Yeah?
No disrespect, but did God reveal himself? Did God reveal himself to Joseph?
God spoke to Joseph. Yes, Joseph was, Joseph was communicating with God.
They were like, what's so wild? Get together.
And get together, so to speak. So this to take out the worry, to take out the fear from Joseph. So I'll tell you a story. I think so this guy, I don't know which Rebbe it was. I read the story. I think it was true. Anyway, so they went to this Rebbe. They were married for a bunch of years. They didn't have kids, and they went to this Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him that in a year from now you'll have a baby. In a year from now you'll have it. That's what he told them. To this couple that was trying to have kids and they couldn't have kids for a while. So a year later they had a baby and they actually circumcised. They called this Rebbe. They called him and they said. So the Hasidim, the other disciples of the Rebbe, said, "How did you know? How did you go about? Who gave you this power to give blessings and so on?" It wasn't the Lubavitcher, it was a different one. So he says, "Actually, I didn't do anything. I told them they're going to have a baby. And you know what they did? They immediately went and they purchased a baby stroller and a crib and bottles and some clothing for the new baby because they became completely peaceful and quiet. They know that in a year they're going to have a baby." Their trust in God was so absolute, was so complete, that for them it was just like, you ordered something on Amazon, it's coming in 2 weeks. What is there to worry about? They were promised that in a year from now they'll have a baby. We have time. You want to get everything on the last minute, but now you could shop, get good deals, wait for Black Friday. I'll get this crib. Oh, there's 50% in that store. We'll get clothing here. We'll get bottles from there, nipples from there. They had time to plan. So, in fact, what brought about the blessing that's what the Rebbe said, it wasn't my blessing. It was their complete trust in God. They trusted completely that it's going.
Calm down.
Exactly, and they brought it on themselves. Yeah. You can't credit it to anyone but to themselves. They had a complete trust in God. This is true trust. Knowing that it's going to work. That's it. It's going to happen. There's nothing I can do. I'm not going to go crazy. On the contrary, I'll be calm. I'll be relaxed. I'll get a baby crib. I'll get a baby stroller. I get everything. So their security, their trust in God was what opened that blessing to them.
Was it a blue room or a pink room?
I don't know. Probably they did green. Well, most of my kids, the twins for sure, we didn't know what we had. But also we bought some things that were unisex. What the doctor told us when we had twins, the doctor said, we said we don't want to know, we want to be surprised. So we didn't know until and the doctor said, I could tell you if it's the same gender or not. Because we knew we had twins. So of course he would have told us it's not the same gender, we would know exactly what we have. But so I could tell you it's the same one. So we don't want to hear. So we just didn't want to know. This is a surprise.
So you shouldn't have asked to know the number as
Oh
well?
no, that was because you were. The pregnancy has to. There's 2 pulses. There's. I didn't go through it. My wife did. So, for me, I wouldn't know what's. For me, really. Don't listen. You were saying something, Richard?
You're so happy whenever you talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Most men in the USA, like, they all have to veg on something. I get out for a walk. I hate it. You're so happy to talk about it.
Yeah, they're good. You see my kids. They're good. Thank God. Yeah, they're good. They always think about you, Richard.
You're very lucky. You don't say, get out.
I try to train them. It doesn't work. Anyway, so this story about this guy, the lottery, okay? So this guy was saying to another guy, this rabbi was saying to another guy, you're going to win the lottery. You're going to win the lottery. And he took it seriously, He quit a job, and he told his wife, he quit his job, he told his wife, he bought a ticket, told his wife, that's it, I'm going to win the lottery. And a few weeks passed by, and of course he didn't win the lottery. So he comes back to the rabbi, and he says, what's going on? He said, I'm going to win. He said, I'm going to win the lottery. And he said, "Did you really trusted me? Did you really believe that you're going to win the lottery?" "Yeah, of course." He said, "Let me ask you a question. What was the lottery? What was the amount?" He says, $100 million. He said, if somebody would have come to you and tell you, "I know your ticket is going to win. I want to buy off your ticket from you in $50 million. Would you sell your ticket or not?" Before the lottery, would you sell your ticket? So he's thinking, so it's better 50 million cash than 100 million profit. "Yes," he said, "I would have sold my ticket." He says, "That's why you didn't win the lottery. Because you didn't really trust that you're going to win it." Okay, so if somebody would have come and tell you, "I think you're going to win. I know you're going to win. Sell me your ticket, $50 million. He's going to make a margin of $50 million more. "I'm going to give you $50 million. Give me your ticket." You would have sell it to him? Yes. That means you didn't really trust that you're going to win the lottery. In other words, trust completely. Okay, this is just a joke, of course. But having trust is having that piece of paper and refusing a $50 million offer. Don't do that at home. And saying, "I'm going to win this lottery," right? This is complete, there's no doubt, no even a glimpse of it, nothing. He knows it's going to win. Somebody says, "I'll buy it from you, 50 million. Yes, that means you're not going to win. That means you don't have full trust. That's what full trust is about.
There's a story also a couple of years ago where a Chabad rabbi was asked people, "If you win the lottery," because everybody's wanting to buy tickets. "If you win the lottery, how much are you going to buy?" They're like, "I don't know, 100,000 or 200,000. "It's $500 million. How much are you going to $1 million?" That's why I don't win the lottery.
Yeah. I don't think Ruben and I were talking about this lottery winning a few years ago, and we pretty much got to realize most people who won the lottery either went mad or right crazy or went bankrupt, or they become more poor than they were before. They don't know how to handle these amounts of money, right? And of course in America you have to publicly be right. You can't tell you have to tell everybody that you.
There's a $1.5 billion ticket out there. No one's turned it in yet.
Really?
1.5 billion. It's the biggest ever.
They didn't. They got the $1 billion. They didn't win.
They probably killed themselves. They were so excited they probably fell off a bridge.
Wow.
The narrow bridge. The one from 1.5 billion.
What is clear, Yaakov Avinu, with his plans divided the camps, etc., was not showing the sense of complete
And that's the reason for the criticism. That's the so in other words, when we look at our forefathers, of course we try to imitate them, but as we said many times, Torah is not all about perfection. Torah is about showing us the fragmentation of everything, showing us, yes, Jacob had behaved in a certain way. Yes, we could learn how we could do slightly better, of course in our own ways, because we cannot judge Jacob. We just explained why was he worried, why was he scared, but that's not true. That's why he was criticized, because that's not complete trust. As you say, complete trust is not dividing the camp. It's approaching Esav and saying, he's going to hug me, he's going to kiss me, that's what's going to happen. Maybe just for a little while, of course. And let's look at what the Rebbe says about. Correct. Very briefly. At that moment, yes. Someone begged the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was the third Rebbe of Chabad, to plead for divine mercies on behalf of a person who was dangerously ill. Somebody came to the Tzemach Tzedek, please pray for this person, he's very ill. The Rebbe replied, Tracht gut, wird sein gut. You heard that probably. Tracht gut, wird sein gut. Think good, it will be good. Think positively and the outcome will be good. It is apparent from the Tzemach Tzedek's words that thinking positively, having bitachon in God, will bring about a good outcome in revealed and manifest good. Right? You know this term? You don't?
No,
but yeah. And here's the explanation. We're going to get the core. This is the pinnacle of the class. Okay, no more cake after this, and no more class. No. Yeah. This is the end of the class. Here's how it's going to work. I'll explain to you, and then we'll read it from inside. He says as follows. Something is not so good that's happening. And you think to yourself, as we said earlier, if I deserve, we said earlier, one level, said, I shouldn't be worried. If I'm good, then nothing bad will happen to me. And if I'm not good, then I probably deserve it, like King David said. But that's not what we were trying to achieve. What we're trying to say, Ido, notice, what we're trying to say is, not that if I'm good, I'll be good. If I'm not good, then whatever, I deserve it. But if I'm good, I'll be good. If I'm not good, because I trust God, then good will come to me. Even though I don't deserve that good will come to me. In other words, yes, I know myself. Yes, I'm far from being perfect. Yes, I know that I did wrong things along the way, that I did things that are deserving that would be against me. But I have true trust in God that everything will work out. I think positively. And this itself is something that I require, I will get rewarded for. It's something that the trust I have in God is real. It's something, it's tangible. And because of that, good will come to me. And like it's whether bitachon, that's what there is. Bitachon is trust, or the Hebrew word, involves work and labor within one's soul. And this effort and labor developing bitachon in God evokes God's kindness. When a person truly trusts in God alone from the depth of his soul, to the extent that he has no worry at all, his arousal of trust itself causes God to conduct himself with him in an appropriate manner, granting him kindness even when on his own accord, without asking this trust into account. Without taking, this trust into account, he is not worthy of such kindness. So in other words, I'm not worthy for it. But because I trust God, then I become worthy. Because I put completely my trust in God, I rely on Him completely, then I become worthy. And then I will be saved, I will be spared. This is the intent of the commandment to trust in God, that a person should cast his burden on God, relying on Him to grant him manifest and apparent good, since he trusts God alone, without making calculations as to whether or not it is possible for him to be saved according to the natural order. This causes a corresponding approach towards him in the spiritual realms. God protects him and showers mercy upon him, even when, were one to make a reckoning, he would not be worthy. And He enables him to appreciate manifest and apparent good. So trusting in God changes everything, because that renders me as I'm worthy to God's kindness, apparently. Because trusting in God against all odds, so that awakens God to do against all odds. That I don't deserve to be spared, I don't deserve to be saved, but I will still be saved because I have true trust in God. The last story I'll share with you today, oh my goodness, it's so late. Marty, you're going back home late, I'm sorry. The last story I'll tell you, what did you want to say? You said one?
You know what time it is?
I'm sorry.
Is anybody online right now with you?
I'm sorry. Okay, it's a long story. Okay, pure in faith. Okay, I'll tell you it short. I'll summarize it in short. Okay, so this guy in France, a French Jew who moved to Israel, and he didn't have children. He went to the Rebbe, and then he had one baby after 10 years of marriage. She was 10 years old. She had headaches. They made some checkups, and they realized she has a tumor in her brain. And the only thing would be to go to Boston, because in Boston have apparently very good hospitals, and there she should be operated in a very complicated surgery. So when he went to Boston, and the doctors gave him two options, either to operate and then not to know whether this would be a successful operation. Mind you, the tissues of the brain are very small. Every little mistake of a nanometer would cause irreversible damage. So then opening it up and closing it back would not necessarily be a good thing. Or just leave her like this, and then they said there's about 6 months left. So he couldn't take it, and he traveled to New York, and he walked into the Rebbe's room. It was cold, and he started bursting into tears. And he was crying, he couldn't speak. He was crying. And this was in the month of Adar, month of Purim. So the Rebbe said, when Adar starts, then Mishenichnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha, right? You multiply your joy. And he says, why would you bring such sadness to this room? And he was, of course, very emotional over it. And he says, my young daughter, she's about to die. The doctors are saying. And the Rebbe says to him, do you think you'll save your daughter by crying? Do you think bringing sadness into this room or bringing sadness into life would help your daughter? So, he said, so he didn't really realize what the Rebbe said, and he left the room. And of course he left as crying as he entered the room. And he realized he forgot to ask. He wanted to ask the question of whether to operate or not to operate. So he wrote a note and he asked the secretary to bring it into the Rebbe of whether to operate or not. And the Rebbe wrote back, I already answered you when you were in the room. But he doesn't recall any answer. It's just that the Rebbe told him he shouldn't be sad because now is a happy month and he should be happy. And he continues on and he asks another question. He says, well, I don't remember. I wasn't sure. What did you say? So the Rebbe said, consult another doctor. So they found another expert in America and they consulted. And he said that they should operate. And they operated. And when they opened they opened everything, they realized the tumor was gone. It wasn't there any longer. And but because they operated, because they opened and closed, it did cause damage. So in other words, if you wouldn't do anything, the Rebbe said, I answered you already, which is just be happy. So the tumor basically was gone by then. So if you wouldn't do anything, everything would be okay. But since he pushed and tried to ask again and again, so he said to operate. Anyway, the girl, the ability to speak, the ability to speak was taken from her. She wasn't able to speak any longer. And they, of course, they had to stay in America for rehabilitation, after a brain surgery. It's not easy. You don't go back to life. And it was already on Pesach time, right? It was Adar before Purim, and this was already on Pesach. They were still in America recovering from the surgery. She was saved, of course. It wasn't for the surgery because when they opened it up, they saw there was no longer a tumor. The tumor was miraculously gone, but because they opened up and closed it, then the ability to speak was taken. So when he went back to the Rebbe, of course, thanking for everything, it was Pesach, and the Rebbe gave him matzah. And the Rebbe told him matzah is food of trust, of belief, of emunah, right? Believing in God, and also food of remedy, of cure. And he says, take one piece for yourself and one piece for your daughter. Your daughter needs remedy, and you need to strengthen your belief in God. And the Rebbe said, there is no reason in the world that your daughter will suffer because you are missing on your belief in God. In other words, if you were to trust God, like I commanded you to trust God, which is to be happy and everything will be okay, so then she would not be operated to begin with and she wouldn't have this issue now. But he said it's not her fault that you don't have enough trust in God. So he gave him 2 pieces of matzah, this one for you, this one's for your daughter. And of course, the story is that eventually she was cured. Yes, of course she wore matzah.
Handmade, right?
Handmade, she wore matzah. Anyway, from all the above, I skipped a few things, I'm sorry. It's just getting too late. Nobody's scratching, nobody's complaining. I don't know why. Usually you complain. When the rabbi goes longer, you have to complain. Otherwise, are you Jewish? This is you have to complain.
I will complain in the name of a cousin.
Ah, okay. Complain in the name of a cousin?
This is very interesting. Can we finish this?
Yes, so let's wrap it up.
I'll be back up on Saturday.
Yeah, we can wrap it up on Saturday. Let's wrap it up today and say that indeed full trust in God is something that not only if you know that you deserve it, even if you know you don't deserve it, but your trust in God changes everything. And when God looks at you and sees that your approach is above nature, although you don't deserve it, you still trust God, everything will be okay. So that makes God reciprocate. And He does the same. Although you don't deserve, God will still spare you from the negativity and will still bring abundance of blessing on you. And that ends it.
2 years ago next April, we had a beautiful party.
2 years ago.
Pesach.
Right.
You were really sick.
I was, yeah.
I mean, we're talking seriously sick.
Yeah, I
And I'm
was.
sure you were believing that God would take care of you and make you better.
Yeah.
Still, you couldn't even talk. So what do you do in that situation? Do you take the medicine or usually go back to
Yeah, I did take some medicine. I was also worried. I was worried even. I had headaches for a few days and I was worried. Like I said earlier, we are living in a time of everybody. Yeah, I just had a flu, but I was worried. It was a time that some of my friends, people got headaches, and unfortunately it became not only headaches, but I don't want to elaborate even more than that. And I was concerned. I had a few days straight of headache, and I was starting to get worried and getting all anxiety, right? Eventually it was nothing, thank God.
Fear, don't fear.
No fear. Have no fear.
God from another plan.
Yep, he has a master plan for everything.
Face, you were really suffering.
I wasn't all well. Okay, but we finished.
2 years ago.
Passover. Anyway, so next week on Tuesday is my birthday, so you're all invited. We're going to do a weekly class together with a full dinner, not only dessert.
What will we have for dinner?
You have to speak to my wife. Next week on Tuesday.
Cake.
There's going to be cake. Yeah, probably there will be cake. And
Richard loves his cake.
yeah, I know.
How many rabbis do we
Look at this. Look at this.
Is anybody still online watching you?
No, that's it. I stopped.
No.